So number one is we work very closely with law enforcement agencies all around the world, including Brazil. If the law enforcement makes a request to us, and there's a real case, we will do everything. We'll be super collaborative. Be it locking the account, freezing assets, turning the assets over to law enforcement, etc. So all of that is we operate exactly like a bank in this situation. That guy probably also used a bank account at some point.
Yeah.
So the banks also have so we do the same thing as banks. He probably had a bank account.
Otherwise, it wouldn't get the money from people.
Right. So the banks also serviced him, and whatever the police, however the banks are cooperating with the police force now, we do as well. If this guy's a known terrorist now, given that this guy's already associated with the case, most likely his name is already in some criminal database.
Yeah.
For other people who are already in the criminal database, when they try to open an account with Binance, they won't be able to, because we use the same databases like WordCheck, Refinitiv. There's a commercial tools provided to banks, and also we use the same thing. Law enforcement people use the same tools. Many times, law enforcement feed them the data of new names that need to add into these databases. We use the same tools. So we operate very, very similar to banks. The United Nations wrote a report saying in the traditional money world, 2 to 5% of the money is used for money laundering, illicit purposes. In crypto, Chainalysis, which is a data analysis firm used by the FBI, and all the law enforcement all around the world. In January this year, they published in 2021, only 0.15% of crypto transactions are potentially associated with illicit activity. So
with laundering.
Yeah, 0.15% versus 2 to 5%.
Great.
So that means crypto is actually very, very hard to use for illicit activities now, because crypto is transparent. It's much easier to track. Whereas using cash, using banks, using gifts, oil, art, all of those are much harder to track. Crypto is too transparent to track. So this is a misconception that that was there from the early days, but it's definitely no longer true now. So the sanction list is a government maintained list, which we get a copy. My understanding is our team gets a copy, and we have experts. We have experts from the ex-FBI, from IRS, from U.S. Treasury, from law enforcement all over the world. They know exactly how to implement this. So, but I want to make the distinction. There's Russians on the sanction list, and the normal Russians who are not on the government sanction list. And so for anybody who's on the sanction list, if they're Russian or not Russian, we don't care. Like if they're on the Russian sanction list, there's a standard procedure to check them, and we implement that very, very thoroughly. Same with banks. There's 350 banks in Russia, only about a dozen are on the sanction list. So the government did not sanction the other 300 something banks. Yeah. So in theory, those 300 banks can still transfer money to the bank, and that would be perfectly legal. And why would my understanding is the banks would not freeze those assets. That's not legal to freeze assets. That's not sanctioned, right? So, and same for us. We run a platform. We don't decide whose assets that are not on the sanction list, that we can just unilaterally freeze all Russians, later on all Brazilians. If Brazilians get into an argument with some other country, one day I decided to freeze all Brazilian citizens' assets. That's crazy. That makes me a criminal. So we use the same processes as banks. So the bank processes are not 100%. The sanction. So we found one person on our platform related to the sanction list. It was a son of a businessman that was recently added to the sanction list. We found that person. The sanction processes do track people related around the sanction list. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're relatives, and also their friends, what they call mules.
All the relationships, the close relationship.
Even like just other people they use as mules. There's a term for it. So, but this is the same process that banks use and we use. We hire the same people that do this in the banks, and they do the same for us. So no one can guarantee 100% some money would not be that, like, I don't know, but we at least are not worse than banks. So number one, I think the Reuters article are talking to our ex-employees. Many of them, of the sources I know, many of them was fired 4 years ago. So they're talking to employees who were terminated for cause, and those guys are not happy about it. So I don't know who the sources they're talking to. They didn't name the sources. They didn't name. So I can't really comment on that. But I can tell you, our compliance is very strong. It's at least banking grade, if not more. Yeah.